What is the best way to protect people in abusive situations from their abuser? Police believe ex-partners killed 2 women on 2 islands recently. Both victims had gone through the process of securing protective orders issued by the courts, but that wasn't enough. What more can the system and the community do to protect those at risk? Join the conversation on domestic violence. Do protective orders work? Next on Insights.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. Police believe that Teresa Cachuela of Oahu and Elizabeth Fernandez of Hawaii Island were killed just 1 week apart by their estranged partners. These cases have shined a light on the deficiencies of the system designed to protect victims of domestic violence from their abusers. Both women filed for and received temporary restraining orders against their abusive partners. Family members of the victims say that the legal documents did little to protect them. So what can be done to keep those trying to leave an abusive relationship safe? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and as always, you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. Now to our guests in studio. Monique Ibarra is the CEO of the Domestic Violence Action Center, or DVAC. She holds a master's in social work from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Before her current role at DVAC, she served as the executive director of Maui's Kahale a Keola Homeless Resource Center. Judge Jessie Hall has been a district family court judge in the First Circuit since 2017. And before becoming a judge, she practiced family law for 18 years. She got her BA at the University of Hawaii at Hilo and is a graduate of Oklahoma City University School of Law. Detective Alan Liu has 17 years of service with the Honolulu Police Department and is currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division. He previously worked in Patrol, the Records and Identification Division, and the Child Abuse Detail. Chantrell Waialai is a family law attorney and domestic violence survivor. She is a graduate of the William S. Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She helps run a program called Pu'uhonua o Ka'ululehua, which aims to help people who have experienced family violence. Monique, I want to start with you. Obviously, 2 cases top of mind for so many, Fernandez and Cachuela. Can you give us a little bit of background, as much as you're willing to share, on those cases?
Well, like what you said, they seemed to do everything right. They went and got their restraining orders. They were looking for ways to keep themselves and their family safe. But a restraining order is really only one part of a safety plan. And when we talk about, there's such thing called a safety plan, where somebody makes a way to keep their plans to keep themselves and their family safe. So they seem to have done all the right things, but unfortunately their abusers still chose a path that brought them to their demise.
Yeah, so unfortunate we are even here tonight. You know, we've been having to talk about this topic. Unfortunately, domestic violence is far too common. You know, those 2 cases, what deficiencies do you think those shine as far as, you know, on our system?
Well, when I think about the Teresa Cachuela case, when you talk about deficiencies, I'm not sure all that happened in her case, if she had other places to go to stay safe or not, because it's really more of a system that we look at as far as safety is concerned. What was her safety plan like? She had the restraining order, which should have worked, except that the abuser in this case didn't respect the restraining order and still violated that in that case. So I can't say all the deficiencies, except that there's other areas that we can look at where it might have been more beneficial to her if she had maybe had more information.
Judge, let's start with the basics. What exactly is a protective order, and what kinds of orders exist?
So there's essentially 2 types of order. There's a temporary restraining order, which when a victim comes to the courthouse to file the petition or the document to request a restraining order, they list all their allegations down, and that then goes before a judge. The judge will review it to make sure that it meets at least the minimal sufficient information necessary to grant it. A temporary restraining order is only good for 6 months because there has to be a hearing within 2 weeks of filing for the petition. At the hearing 2 weeks later is where they can request to extend the order, and if at the hearing they prove the allegations and the order is extended, an order for protection is then put in place. There is no actual time limit to an order for protection. It just has to be a reasonable amount of time.
Can a minor apply for a protective order, a TRO?
So the law just changed last year where a 16-year-old can or older can apply for a TRO on their own without needing their parents' consent.
Detective, can you explain how does a TRO protect, women or men, children in, situations of domestic violence?
Well, in most cases, just from my own experience in patrol and working with the people at the Criminal Investigation Division, it does, most of the time, it does work. It's kind of like, in a way, it kind of rings the person's bell like, oh, you're really serious now. I could get arrested if I violate this, and it kind of puts the brakes on the person. I think it is effective most of the time. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can't always plan for every eventuality. If someone really, really, really wants to do something to you, so I've seen people actually move to another state, like Las Vegas, just to get away because they know, that they have to make that dramatic. And I'm not saying that the victims in this did anything wrong at all, but and I can't speak about it because they're open investigations.
Right.
But,
Can you speak to some of the challenges when it comes to implementing and also from the law enforcement side, enforcing a protective order?
Sure. Sometimes when we try to serve them, or my experience when I was trying to serve them, the person could be at home, we're knocking on the door, and they know that if we don't have the rights to go into the house, because even though we think they're there, they'll just not even answer the door. They'll make sure they're never home, or they're like at work, or sometimes even their employers might cover for them. I've seen that, or suspected. Those are some of the challenges too. Yeah. And
Chantal, at the end of the day, I've heard some people say, oh, the TRO at the end of the day is just a piece of paper. What would you say to, women who, or again, could be men as well, who are, in situations where they might need or thinking about getting a TRO?
Mm-hmm. Well, as a family law attorney, I've assisted clients in obtaining TROs, order for protection. So I do see the value in it, but I also can see where at the end of the day, it is a piece of paper. And if someone is not valuing that, if someone's not taking it seriously, then we also need to consider that. So my approach is having real life conversations with my clients, people that I'm working with, and I want to talk to them about possible risks and what could happen if we file it. And I believe that the person who's coming to me knows that person best. Mm-hmm. So I'm here to inform them of the law, but I also want to hear and discuss real life possible consequences of what may happen. And that's my concern. I think something, I had the opportunity to work at Domestic Violence Action Center as an attorney, and something that I took with me from DVAC is also, in addition to looking at a safety plan, a lethality assessment. A lethality assessment is when we're looking at factors in the situation to determine the possibility of them doing something like murder. So, possible factors could be choking someone. And that's going to tell me that it could increase. Generally, these situations do, and that's a helpful way to kind of gauge things. From a survivor perspective, if I could add on, I had a lethality assessment done with me and my advocate, and that was a reality check for me because I was going through these situations for many years, and of course he didn't murder me, but there is an increase in what's happening, and you're not fully able to assess the situation as someone on the outside would. So having an advocate sit down with me and asking me about these things and then telling me you're at high risk for lethality was kind of a shock, and it took me a while to really register that. But that's another helpful measure. Mm-hmm.
It also speaks back to when you speak about that as well, is a TRO, a temporary restraining order, isn't for everyone. So when you look at the lethality assessment, because leaving your partner, abusive partner, is one of the most dangerous times for a victim in her life or his life. And so when you speak about that, so we might say everybody should get a temporary restraining order, but that may not be the case based on the person's situation and what she knows her abuser to be like. So it really varies according to the family and what she's dealing with.
What are some signs for people that maybe they are in a domestic, abusive relationship, and maybe they, haven't admitted it to themselves or they haven't come to that realization yet?
I have a very good definition, if you don't mind me sharing it. So this is, I love this definition. It comes from justice.gov. And it says that domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. Domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, or technological actions or threats, or actions or other patterns of coercive behavior that influence another person within an intimate partner relationship. So a long definition, but it kind of helps us to know what is domestic violence, because oftentimes victims don't know that they're in a domestic violence relationship until somebody like an advocate says to them, you're in an abusive relationship. And so those are some of the things involved with the definition. But when you look at what does it look like, it's power and control from one person over another. And they might feel that their partner is their property, that they own that person and they can make the decisions over what happens to that person. And there's some other areas. If you want to talk about other indications of domestic violence.
Well, I think you did a very conclusive, overall definition of it. I think so.
And is it usually the advocate that recommends someone get a protective order or a TRO?
That's a good question. I think it involves the group that the person might be working with. It might be family members. It may be an attorney that will work with the victim to say this might be something that you want to consider, or an advocate. Oftentimes it may be hopefully somebody that's been trained in domestic violence, so maybe a school social worker or an employer might be able to tell someone to consider that. A police officer might also.
Judge, can you speak also to the timeline? How long does it take to get a TRO? Do you need an attorney to get a TRO?
You do not need an attorney. The best way to do it is to come to the courthouse, because in the First Circuit, we do have court officers that will assist or at least review the paperwork. Once you fill out the paperwork, it's taken up to a judge. Within a couple hours, you will know whether it's been granted or denied. And then again, the hearing is about 2 weeks away. But one thing people need to understand is it's not effective unless it's served on the other side. So the other person could be contacting the victim over and over again, but if they haven't been served, that's not a violation. So everybody needs to understand that. And to Monique's definition, another thing people need to understand is the most risky time for a victim is when they decide to leave the abuser, because that's when they lose their power and control, and that's when they become the most dangerous. So when they make that difficult decision that I'm going to leave, I'm going to get an order for protection, that's also the most difficult and most dangerous time for them.
Detective, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was going to add that too. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that maybe when the TRO is finally served, everyone kind of like relaxes and like, okay, good, now she's protected, he's protected. But no, it's the opposite. I think this is the time when everyone's got to like be even more alert and cognizant of what's going on, and making sure, like, let's say I was served with it, and I know my ex-wives or whoever, I know her work patterns, I know what kind of car she drives, I know what time she leaves. The families all got to come together and be aware. I would have the victim also always have their cell phone charged, always have gas in the car, have an escape route, or always be ready to, and always let your family members know where you're going, and always maybe have someone with you if it's possible at all times, if you can. There's safety in numbers.
Yeah, you use the word everyone. Do you mean telling your family and friends, people in your inner
yes.
circle, what's going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, communication. I think that's important. You got to let them know. Sometimes they may not be wanting to say what's going on at home, but I think it's important that they know. Like even the employers, if the guy just shows up one day and they didn't know that he had a TRO served on him, and he's here violating it. I think it's important that as many people know as possible.
Monique, is that something you see where victims don't want to say to their people in their inner circle or even like their workplace?
Shame and stigma is such a huge part of an everyday for a victim. And so we're really believing their story and hearing them and not minimizing if they do disclose that there's domestic violence or abuse, or they're not quite sure what's happening here, but it doesn't feel right and it hurts, if there's physical violence. So we do need to squash that stigma and shame as much as possible and make sure that it's not a secret, so to speak. So of course you want to be careful with who you speak to. If you have a temporary restraining order, you want to make sure that you tell somebody that you initially that you feel safe with, that you can trust, that's going to make sure that you are in the plan to stay safe as well. But unfortunately, there's just still so much stigma and shame surrounding domestic violence. And I wish we could get rid of that, because we could probably help more of our community members if they're able to go and tell somebody that they need help.
Mm-hmm. Judge, I want to go back to something you said about, the protective orders, that basically they're not good until they're served. Right. How long does it take to get served? And if you can talk about that process.
So it does require law enforcement to serve. And if there is a statement in the petition that says the person has guns, then for HPD that makes it a little more difficult, because sometimes they do have to get their special services.
Yes, this SSD, yes, correct.
To be able to serve it. So, and as Detective Liu said, a lot of times they'll answer the door and say, no, that's not me. And it's just so difficult. If they don't want to be served, they can avoid being served.
When you say avoid being served, maybe Detective, this might be where you can jump in. How long can they get away with not being served their TRO?
Well, I was reading our policy. We have it 7 days. Keep making attempts. Every watch, as soon as right before lineup. First thing I remember, my sergeant putting that TRO down right on my desk in front of me. He said, "This has got to be. You got to go to the house and make sure you check." From my experience, we would just keep going and going, and then we would log it. We have like a piece of paper that's attached to it, so you log the date, time, and the officer that goes, and make sure that there is a record of it. We just keep going and going until the court date was getting closer, I believe. Then there's a court date that's on the TRO that they're supposed to appear. Let's say it's served, and then I think the judge had mentioned that within like 2 weeks or so. Right. So sometimes the court date will be here and we still haven't served it yet. Now it's like, what do we do? So then I believe our policy says our watch commander will contact the court, let them know. So,
Chantal, what do you tell the victims that you work with and your clients what to do in that meantime while maybe they're waiting for the protective order to be served?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny that we're discussing this, because most of the time when I'm working with clients, they've pretty much already been served. A TRO has been served when they come to me. But if we are waiting for that, I'm trying to think back to situations. Of course, I always assess safety whenever there's a domestic violence situation, whether I'm doing a divorce where they haven't necessarily called it out as a domestic violence situation. So that's one thing that I would do. And then another thing I might ask them about is like what police station they went to, who they spoke to. Sometimes I'll check if it's possible to try their employer, looking at other police stations that may be nearby if they're having difficulty. I was wondering, Detective, if it would be helpful to provide service instructions, for example, a photo of the person, a description of their car, their license plate, and whatnot.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
That just came to mind as we were discussing.
That's a great idea. Yes.
Is that something that victims already provide, or that's not provided?
Not from my experience. I haven't been in patrol for many, many years. Maybe it's changed since then, but from what I've seen and the reports that come through when we did like TRO violation cases, which I did as a detective, I don't recall seeing. Sometimes there is, and that's a great help for us, but not always. Yeah.
And if it's not served within the 2 weeks, where the first hearing is, because the TRO is good for 6 months, we will continue the hearing and issue a new hearing date. And we usually continue it closer to the 6 months to give as much time as possible. And we do try to tell those filing that, keep contacting HPD, try to give them as much information as possible. And especially, we have a lot of people that are homeless that need to be served, and that's extremely difficult. So if you can tell them, what location they tend to go to, any information you can provide would be helpful.
And is that already on, when you're filing for a TRO, or is that the kind of information that gets asked?
So on the paperwork, it's just their address, phone number, name that's put on there. But you can always, a lot of victims will actually take the paperwork to HPD. So when they go take it to HPD, that's when they can provide additional information.
And Judge, I also wanted to ask you, what are the legal ramifications if someone violates a TRO?
It's actually a criminal offense that could be punishable up to a year as well as a fine.
And then, Detective, if you can add on to that,
Yes.
what happens? Let's say maybe I'm the victim, and let's just say, hypothetically, in a domestic abuse situation,
Yes.
I have a TRO against someone, and maybe I would call HPD if that person violates it. What then happens next?
Yes, we encourage that as soon as there's a violation to please report it immediately. We'll make checks in our computer system with our dispatchers to make sure that it was served, that there's a form called a proof of service that has to be signed, date and time. So that's the key right there. If we see that and we read the reports and we say, okay, good, he or she was served already, and have the person write, we call a HPD 252 written statement. The victim can write it out and say, okay, this date and time, Mr. Smith called me, my ex-husband, and this is a violation. And we read the TRO and it says, yep, you're not allowed to call. Then we'll make the case. I believe it's a misdemeanor offense. And then we will look for him. We shall, policy says, you shall attempt to locate and arrest this person. Yeah, so there's no question about that. And those are priorities, especially these ones, because the liability and just the risk of harm to the victim is so great. We want to make sure that we do all the checks we can, send a follow-up officer. Let's say you lived in Honolulu, but the offender lives maybe in Kahuku or Pro City, where I grew up. Then we'll have an officer in Pro City go to the house and check. Yeah, and they'll be in the report too. Yeah.
I do want to get to what resources are out there for those in domestic abuse situations. I want to get to this viewer's question, kind of a statement. This is Roger from Lanai. He's saying, I think TROs work to a certain extent, but they need to have a program where the victims can go somewhere to get the support they need. They need a place to stay and somewhere to financially support them, especially if the abuser is the breadwinner. Monica, would love for you to chime in, and also Chantrell about your nonprofit, because this is also what DVAC does.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the caller, because how supportive is that statement? So it made me get emotional, but yeah, thank you for that, because there actually are a lot of resources. Well, I don't say a lot. There's quite a bit of resources available to victims of domestic violence to get the resources, perhaps financial assistance, case management. There's actually domestic violence shelters all across the state. So individuals can call different agencies on their islands. DVAC has a helpline, so if anyone calls our helpline, which I know the number will be posted, we can give information about that as well. There's also the Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence that has all the member agencies that they can call. So there is quite a bit of assistance out there. I think we do need more, especially given the Maui wildfire disaster. I know that Maui's suffering a bit and they need a little bit of extra help. But there are a lot of resources available.
Chantrell would love to hear a little bit about your nonprofit and what you do.
Oh, yes. So I'm working with Pu'uhonua o Ka'ululekua. We're under Epic Ohana, and we work with survivors more of on a one-on-one and group basis, and we focus on working with Kanaka or Native Hawaiians because we are a Hawaiian cultural organization in regards to the Pu'uhonua itself and how we operate, but we of course work with everyone, and we're coming in from Hawaiian cultural practices, so that's another thing. But what we do is we try to provide holistic services, so we do have one-on-one support. That's something that I would be meeting with a survivor on. We have group classes, whether they be cultural classes or talk story sessions, more for support that are follow-ups to our weekly classes. And then in our one-on-one sessions, what we'll do is, when I say we, me and the survivor, I will meet with them either in person or on Zoom so that we can have that face-to-face connection, that time together. Culturally, that's something that's really important. And then also we have that time to discuss their individual needs, and that could range from finances to housing to childcare and whatnot. And with our connections, we work with the survivor one-on-one, not just in providing them like the resource that here it is and you're off, but more so talking to them about their needs. We do SMART goals, so actually working on a plan for those goals, short-term and long-term, whether they be financial or education, whatever it may be, and really try to work with them. And one thing that has been particularly helpful, and just to add to this, is kind of being like an accountability person or another person to touch base with. So if I do set a goal with someone, you know, I'm not necessarily forcing them to have to meet with me again, but they'll text me like pictures of the steps that they're taking, or if they want me to check in on them, like, hey, so did you call that agency? Do you need me to call them with you? And it's just being more of like a hand-holding type of approach. If they need to meet with someone else, I'll do a warm handoff where I speak with that person as well. If they're going to work with another attorney, I kind of touch base with them, kind of break the ice, and I, you know, gently hand them over to that other organization as opposed to just sending them off. And lastly, I'll say we build pilina, we build relationships. So I'm someone that's close to them. And I think that's important, which is why we keep our group small, but we're able to have really strong bonds.
That's awesome. I think, you know, obviously DVAC, great organization. There are resources out there. I'm sure we need many more. But can you tell our viewers how they can reach out to you? And, you know, if anyone watching wants to be a part of your nonprofit or needs help, how can they reach you?
Oh, yes. I believe I gave the contact information to be posted on the screen. I'm sorry. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Yep, we're showing it right now.
Perfect. So I can be contacted, or our pu'uhonua can be contacted via text or by a phone call at that number.
Perfect. I can just read it off just in case, but it is
Thank
on our
you.
screen, 808-865-2195. I also now want to move on to a question that I think everyone might want to chime in on, but I'll direct this to Detective. It's a caller, and this person is saying, I had a neighbor who went out of the country and brought a woman home with him. After a while, he began abusing her. She spoke with me about the situation, but her English was very poor. What can we do to help somebody when they have very bad English and aren't from this country? I think this touches on that topic of if you suspect someone is in an abusive relationship, how do we help them?
That's good, and I thank that caller too, because that shows that they care. You know, one of the frustrations I had in patrol was that neighbors wouldn't. They would just like turn off, but that looks like so. We have language services available. If that neighbor wants to call 911 on behalf of that person, she can agree to meet with the officer and kind of be like the spokesperson in a way, or be sort of like the person that can, because she can speak English and, you know, communicate what's going on. We can also have the officer can call for a translator to help with the 252. An officer, maybe some of our officers are bilingual. They can read, write, speak other languages too, so can do that as well. But I would encourage that person to definitely reach out to us, call 911, and just sort of serve as the go-between between the victim and us, so that we can, you know, help that person.
And the judiciary also has language services for when they come to file. We would be able to assist them with that.
Mm-hmm. Monique, what would you recommend for someone who may be, you know, on the outside but suspect there could be a domestic violence issue going on?
Well, number one, like this caller said, is believe them. So believe them, take it seriously if they're seeking out help, or they're hearing something, or something just doesn't seem right, or it's not normal. Perhaps she's there every week and all of a sudden you don't see her for several weeks, and then she comes out again. So maybe build a relationship with that person as much as possible. Recommend that person call to different agencies. There's 211, there's the police department, there's CFS PAC, there's DVAC, so there's many agencies that person can call. But I like that protective measure of just keeping in touch, or being a good neighbor to that person.
Is it possible, though, that maybe calling, you know, police could make the situation worse for that person?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. So that would be part of a safety plan or a lethality assessment, perhaps, to say maybe calling the police, maybe calling 911 isn't the best answer. And so are there other numbers that that person can call? Is there another place that they can stay if they need to for safety? And there's also domestic violence shelters as well that most domestic violence shelters are going to be able to work with somebody who speaks of a different language. I know for our helpline at DVAC, we have multiple language that we have diversity in our staff so that we are able to speak and help people that have other languages.
You touched on one point that leads me to this viewer question. John from Makakilo asking, are there any women's shelters on Oahu or the other islands?
Yes. Now, I don't represent all of those agencies, but I know that on Oahu there are domestic violence shelters, Maui, Big Island, I believe Lanai as well. But again, if anyone needs more information, I would reach out to the Hawaii State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, because they do have on their website, they have listings of resources that are available.
Chantra, I know earlier you shared that you were a survivor yourself. You know, what would you recommend to maybe somebody watching who's a family or a friend of someone where they suspect domestic abuse might be going on? How could that person help?
Well, I know they give the statistic that it takes on average, 7 times for someone to leave, and it really depends on the situation. For myself, I can say that I was in the relationship for 9.5 years to give some kind of gauge. And so I think what really helped me, because I can only speak from my own life story, is being able to have resources and people throughout my experience, because I can't say that one person stuck around that long, 9.5 years, but throughout my experience, somehow I always had someone to touch base to at different times in my life. And then towards the end, while I was in law school, I was able to kind of share that with someone while I was in law school, and that person kind of helped me through to the end. But I really think that it wasn't just that end line, it was from the start to finish. I remember a police officer at one point responding, and he had been to our home so many times that he kind of knew me already. And he saw, because I had my BA, my MA at the time, and he was like, look at all your degrees. And, he was just like, you don't need this. He was talking to me just very one-on-one. And I always remember him. And that was a moment that stuck with me later on in the finish line, when he was probably here in the middle and the beginning. So I just think that kind of just being there, showing grace, and being a safe place, which is kind of what sparked the Pu'uhonua and that idea for me, is something that you can do with safety, of course, because it's a dangerous situation to get involved. So I do caution that, and I don't think that everyone should have to be forced to put themselves in a situation, especially if it's a dangerous one.
Yeah, Monique, if you're on the outside and you want to help your family member or a friend, how do you kind of balance that line of maybe when to call police, or do you just talk to that person? How do you balance that?
I think just showing that you care, reaching out to that person, being a caring neighbor or coworker, maybe if you're in school together, just building that relationship of asking how are they doing. If you've noticed something that's different about that person, perhaps looking at them and saying, well, do you need a number to call? Is there, do you want to speak to somebody about this? I think really just, again, believing them, don't shame them, don't judge them, just saying, I'm here for you. Because even when Chantrell talked about, it could take up to 7 times. So in that time, if you're with that woman who's going through domestic violence, keep believing her, let her keep coming back, because the day may come when she is done. So I think that's important, just supporting them and listening to them. It means a lot.
Being a supportive person for them to turn to.
Yes.
Judge, I have a question for you. This is David from Mililani, one of our viewers. He's asking, are all TROs approved? And if not, what are some of the reasons they are not approved?
They're not approved if they don't meet the requirement of the definition of domestic violence. And for family court TROs, they may not be approved if they're not involving a family or household member, because the family court TROs are only family or household members. If they don't have that, and it has to be a relatively close familial relationship. So it can't be your fifth cousin or something like that. If you don't have that, then you need to go to district court to file. And district court is more of a harassment type of TRO versus a domestic violence TRO. So if the allegations don't necessarily rise to the level of domestic violence, it will be denied.
Is, in the cases where they're denied, is that usually because they don't have, let's say, an attorney filing the TRO for them?
Majority of our petitions are not filed with attorneys. They're filed by the person themselves. I would probably say maybe only 5% have attorneys when they file. So having an attorney or not has nothing to do with it. It's what they write in it, because we're not allowed to talk to them when they file. All we have is what they've written on the paper. So if they don't provide enough detail, we may not be able to see what's actually occurring. So the more detail they can provide, dates they can provide, the better it would be to get it granted.
Specific examples of instances that happened?
Absolutely. The more specific you can be, the better it would be.
Okay.
That also helps the officer because they'll read it, they'll see it before they serve it. They get an idea, okay, what is this person like that we're going to go face to face with if we serve it, and can kind of know, okay, he slapped her or him or her punched her, hurt his or her dog or whatever. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, I really like that. And it was just reminding me too that sometimes when clients come to me with the petition already filed and we're waiting for the trial or the hearing date, they might have only listed like 1 or 2 incidences when really there's like a whole laundry list that they just didn't list, because when they go to the courthouse, when you finally bring yourself to do that step, it's very emotional, it's very difficult. So one thing I found helpful that I utilized myself was kind of writing it out beforehand. And then going to the courthouse, kind of thinking of things if you can beforehand. They do have the petition forms on the family court website, when I last checked at least, and so you could print it out and kind of jot those things down beforehand if that's helpful.
Yeah, and also when you don't put everything down at the hearing, we're limited to what you put in on the petition. You can't bring up things that you failed to put in because it's notice to the other side. They have to have notice in order to prepare their own arguments. So if you forgot, potentially the worst incident, you now can't bring it up at the hearing.
Wow.
And that's another difficult issue. So absolutely, write as much as you can.
Can your list be too long?
No.
You can add continuation pages.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So write down every detail.
Every detail.
Detective, you brought something up about how the detail is important, because in the TRO, officers will read it to get an idea of what type of guy they're serving it to. Does the detail ever give you enough information where maybe you might change how you approach when you're serving that person? Maybe bringing more officers or?
Well, we always go at least, have a cover, when we go to any type of domestic case. That's a given already. But yeah, I think it would, the more information, then they can give it to their partners, let them know. And because every watch change, they'll get that TRO if it hasn't been served. They can look at it, let the guys know, hey, this is what we got here. This is what's been said. The more information, the better. I guess, it could just ramp up the alert level, let them know, so we're all on the same page. Yeah.
More detail, the better.
Yeah.
Judge, another question for you. How do courts balance the need for immediate protection while also balancing, the rights for the accused?
So we will err on the side of caution, and we will, if it shows the allegations show domestic violence, we will grant it, because we have to err on that side of caution until the hearing. I know I'm just saying just 2 weeks, but 2 weeks of being safe versus risking not granting it and having something happen, I'd rather be safe.
Emmett from Pearl City, this is a question for Detective Liu. He's saying, Officer Liu was talking about serving TROs and how people will say, that's not me. Can't police compare names and information with driver's license photos, and can officers use their body cameras to capture their image to see if they are lying to them and maybe charge them later? So maybe you can go into more detail about the serving process.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm glad they asked that, because yes, we do. We are able to Before we even go to the house, we can look and bring up the name of the person, the date of birth, run it. If they have a record or a driver's license, we can see a photograph. It'll might show what type of vehicle they drive. So we go up to the house, we see, oh yeah, he has a Honda Accord registered to him or her. There it is, right there. There's a license plate. Yeah, and the guy at the door talking to me kind of looks like that person, you know. So maybe we'll ask a little more questions and a little more, you know, and yeah, and hopefully get the desired result, serving it.
And
you know.
I just want to be clear, majority of them are served.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
true.
not a situation where most are not being served. The majority of them are being served.
Yeah.
Judge, how do you navigate cases where there might be a lack of evidence?
Because we're the neutral, we cannot necessarily pull the information out. If we do have questions, we are allowed to ask questions, but it is up to the parties to present their evidence. They can bring exhibits, they can bring witnesses. They're not limited to just what they have. There are situations, if there's allegations of abuse towards a child, we call it stamp it. We will stamp it for Child Welfare Services to do an investigation. That's another layer of information that we can have, because the social worker will actually go out, and if the child's of an age that they can have a conversation with, that information from the child will also come in as part of the evidence.
You brought up, you know, child abuse. I did want to ask Monique this question. You know, are there ever instances where children can call if they know or witness, you know, their parents in a abusive relationship? Perhaps I'm assuming it would be an older child, like a teenager.
Can they call the Domestic Violence Action Center?
Yeah, or what do you recommend, or what have you seen other children do?
I don't know of children calling the Domestic Violence Action Center helpline. I know we wouldn't turn them away. So if an adolescent or a minor did call us and make a statement that, or they ask questions about that, we would do what we could to work with them or help them in that instance as much as possible. But it even goes to schools as well, because it's something where students might be able to speak to their counselors or their teachers that there might be something happening at home, and this might lead to greater training opportunities in the Department of Education, which we would be happy to do. But I would hope that any adults that listen to a child talk about potential domestic violence would hear them and help get them the information that they need.
Mm-hmm. Detective, you worked in the child abuse detail for some time.
Sure.
You know, you probably saw it firsthand, but what kind of impact long term does, you know, children of maybe it's the parents in an abusive relationship, what kind of long-term impacts does that have on our keiki?
I was only in the unit for a short time, but I worked with some great people. I don't want to say his name because he'll probably get mad, but one of the best partners I've ever had is in child abuse right now. Great heart, a lot of heart, and like all the people that I work with. But anyway, more from the domestic violence side of it, it becomes like a pattern. If the child grows up in an abusive household, they can see like, oh, my dad hit my mom, that's how they argue, oh, this is normal, this is okay. So they get into a relationship when they get older and they have a boyfriend that hits him too. Think it's normal because this is what I saw growing up. That can be one of the things, and yeah, not directly related, I think, to your question, but what they see, they see it as normal if the pattern is not broken.
And also research shows that children that are in homes with domestic violence, they tend to lead more risky lives. They'll get involved in criminal activity as juveniles. They may have teen pregnancies. They may get involved with drugs. Their grades go down. So these are all signs of a child that's in a household that may have some domestic violence or trauma going on in the home.
Chantrell, what do you think are some of the gaps currently in our system when it comes to the resources available for victims of domestic violence?
Well, you know, speaking from my own perspective, I said that it took 9.5 years, and it wasn't because I didn't recognize something. It wasn't because I didn't want to leave sometimes. It really was about being able to survive. I was very young. I was 20 when I had my first child, and one big thing was having access to childcare. I know it sounds like, what, that's the connection, but that was one big thing is I didn't know how I would support us because I didn't have childcare. And without that childcare, then I couldn't work or I couldn't go to school. Where would we live? Like all of these different resources. And we can all empathize with the fact that it's very expensive in Hawaii today. And so with the high cost of living, it becomes almost impossible. Like I have literally thought at moments in my life, like this scenario, and I'm a problem solver, you know, I think I'm kind of intelligent. And I was like, this scenario is impossible. I don't know how I'm going to solve this. And just looking at the circumstances. And then coming from the fact that you're in a situation that is very emotionally stressful, taxing, your life is at threat, you're physically being harmed, whatever the circumstances may be, how can you then navigate a system or circumstances that are virtually impossible at that moment? So, and I think, you know, many can empathize with the difficulty of navigating living in Hawaii today. So if I were to kind of summarize a big barrier for me and a gap, I would say that just trying to survive. It could be yourself too. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have children, but then that's another thing to factor in.
Yeah, and you know, separately on another step to that, what legal changes do all of you think could be made to help better protect our victims of domestic violence?
One thing that I've thought about often with the past domestic violence murders and suicides is when we look at potentially having mandated reporting for somebody that it threatens suicide. So the threat of suicide by an abuser is actually an indicator of lethality as well. So that also is an indicator that the situation is much more dangerous than we'd likely know. So for me, I would like to see some type of assessment or something that we can do for individuals who are threatening suicide in these situations. If there's also, not if, but as well as when there's restraining orders involved and other types of domestic violence situations that have happened.
Detective, I know maybe you have a different from the law enforcement perspective.
You know, I think for when I was in child abuse, there's so many dedicated people in child welfare services that you can tell they're just taxed. I mean, they have so many cases and they're not enough. I'm not sure if maybe more funding, that's an easy answer, but getting the funding is hard. But I think maybe that might help, at least in terms of child abuse and helping the children, maybe steal more money that way. I'm just talking for myself as an investigator. I'm not talking about the department taking a stand for them, but I think from what I've seen, I think they would help if they had more people.
Chantrell, from a family law perspective, from the lawyer perspective, what do you think could be changed to better help protect our victims of domestic violence?
Wow, there are so many different possibilities, but because the child abuse was just mentioned, this is fresh on my mind with the idea of TROs as well. When there's a petition for a temporary restraining order or an order for protection, and children are involved, as Judge mentioned, it's kind of stamped for Child Protective Services to review the case, and they conduct an interview. And one difficulty that I've had as an attorney is the factors that we need to prove domestic violence. Sometimes those factors aren't used by the social workers that are actually investigating the abuse case itself. So they might be looking at it from a different approach, or when opposing counsel is questioning them as to how they've reached their finding, whether there is a threat of abuse or not, those don't always necessarily align up with the factors that I need to prove my case, and then that puts a loophole in what's going on. And if I'm representing a survivor, that makes it difficult. And I've seen situations when it's kind of clear cut on my end because I'm representing the survivor, though, that something's not right, that there's stuff going on. But it's not always coming out that way. And so if there could be more of a connection behind the scenes of what's going on with the investigation and what we need to prove. Sorry if that was very long-winded, but that was just something that came to mind.
Yeah. Judge, anything that you wanted to add to that?
Well, we're not able to create laws that can plan for every possible situation. I mean, for Chantrell, what she described, Child Welfare Services is only coming in to look at whether or not there's a safety issue for the child. they're not there to determine if the domestic violence occurred. And I don't think a lot of people don't understand when they come in that it's not about that. Also, if we could have more funding to create safe places for victims to go to. So when they decide to make that move, they have someplace safe for at least a temporary period of time until they can get on their feet to stay with themselves, their children, their pets. Because a lot of times they have to leave their pets behind because a lot of rentals won't take pets with them. And they'll stay because they can't take their pets.
That's definitely an issue here in Hawaii. Not a lot of pet-friendly rentals. I know that from firsthand experience. But your comment is a perfect transition to this viewer's question. This is Eric. He emailed in. There's a lot of domestic violence towards men in this state, but virtually no programs to get them support. Almost all programs only support women. Is this problem being addressed? Monique, maybe that's something that you can talk about.
Well, I know for DVAC, we have female victims of domestic violence, and we also have male victims as well. It's just that it's more common that it would be a female that would be experiencing the abuse in a family. So I would say, and again, I don't run all the other agencies, but I would say that all of the other agencies would have mechanisms to help men who are also victims of domestic violence as well.
So still call.
Still call, absolutely. They'll do safety planning. They also have domestic violence shelters that they may be able to take a male victim in as well, or have some type of an accommodation for a male, because domestic violence is in every single community. It's in every single one of our ethnicities, our races, our backgrounds, our cultures. It's in every single sector. So we know that, and we take that into account when somebody calls and they're seeking assistance.
And we have to break down the stigma of shame of a male being
Absolutely.
abused. You know, they have to be able to come out without feeling shame and being told, how can you be abused? You're the man.
Same with LGBTQ as well.
Exactly.
So that is, again, it's in every single community, unfortunately. And so I would say every agency would be able to accommodate anyone who calls if they're a victim of domestic violence, for the most part.
You know, we just have a few minutes left. I did want to ask Detective this. You know, in the case of Teresa Cachuela, a TRO was filed and law enforcement did confiscate Jason Cachuela's firearms. Obviously, he was still able to get his hands on one. Is there anything that can be done to ensure that those, you know, with a history of domestic violence can't get their hands on a weapon?
I can't speak about the case itself because it's an open investigation, but in general terms, it's like the judge was saying too, you can't create every law is going to address everything, just like every law is not going to address completely stop crime 100%. A TRO is not going to 100% stop a person from getting a gun if they really want a gun. There's so many, you know, avenues, legal, illegal, whatnot. But I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, was that when the TRO is issued, then don't relax. That's not the time to say, oh, breathe a sigh of relief, okay, it's served. No, this is the really dangerous time now. You guys all gotta be on your game and, you know, really look out for this person, because this is, we're in the danger zone now, sort of,
Definitely good advice for our viewers if anyone's listening who, you know, unfortunately might find themselves in that situation. On that note, I want to ask our other three guests on our panel, what advice would you give someone seeking a protective order? Monique, maybe I'll start with you.
Just call, reach out, get information. If that's something that you want to do, then I would say reach out to the agency that can help you with that. Don't be afraid. I mean, I take that back. That's a horrible thing to say, because there is a lot of fear. But don't be ashamed. Reach out. There's agencies that will help you.
And what about just maybe even advice if you think that you're, you know, coming to terms that you might be in an abusive relationship?
Yeah, agencies can help you with that too. If you're not sure what it is, then call and ask, and I'm pretty sure that you would get that question answered, so you have a better idea of what you're actually dealing with.
DVAC has a lot of great resources. I know we've been putting their number right there on our screen. I can also read it off. It is 808-531-3771. That's the DVAC Oahu helpline. Just want to make sure that our viewers out there have that number. Judge, from you shared some great advice a little bit earlier in the show about having detail in those protective orders. Any other advice you would give to someone seeking?
Just plan ahead. Before you come to file, have a plan. Tell somebody you trust that you're going to be doing it. If you need to, have someplace safe to stay. You know, have a go bag packed if you need to. but just plan ahead.
Detective, you even earlier mentioned cell phone charge,
Yes.
gas tank, keep it full.
Yes.
Sounds like definitely a plan in place, and like you said, have a go bag. Chantrell, from the attorney perspective, but also, you've unfortunately experienced it firsthand. What would be your advice to any other victims out there?
Yeah, just to add to the advice that I was already hearing, I think those were great tips. Some of the things that I would think of is taking a look at that second page. It's usually the second page. Can't say right now what it is on the website, but the second page of the petition or wherever it may be, there are some definitions as to what domestic violence is, what are some factors that the judge is looking at. And I always tell my clients to take a look at that. I circle certain words for them so that I want them to speak to that in their writing so that their petition is granted. And also, having a journal is another thing that's helpful, and you can refer to that journal when you're ready to do that petition, and you can go back and look at these instances because you might have details in there, you may have dates in there, and just to kind of track for yourself as a survivor, me looking back at my own journal entries, there were times when I thought maybe I exaggerated what happened, like did they really do that?
Yeah.
And then to my surprise, I was like, wow, like how I said it in that speech or told my story publicly, that was word for word what I wrote.
Yeah, have that long list, like we said a little bit earlier. Thank you all so much for being here in studio tonight. Such an important topic. Also, of course, want to thank all of you, our viewers at home. Our guests in studio, Monique Ibarra, CEO of the Domestic Violence Action Center, Detective Alan Liu from the Honolulu Police Department, Judge Jesse Hall, thank you for being here from the First Circuit Court, and Chantrell Wailai, family law attorney. Next week on Insights, dogs killed 2 people in the last year here in Hawaii, so are owners held accountable when their pets kill or injure others? Please join us then for that topic. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Inside